It's 2 in the morning, and your body is exhausted, but your mind is still running the same conversation for the ninth time. Replaying what you said, rehearsing what you should have said instead, predicting a disaster that hasn't happened yet and might never happen at all. This is overthinking, and it feels productive while you're doing it, like you're solving something. Almost always, you're not. You're just burning energy in a loop that never actually reaches a conclusion. Today we're going to look at why overthinking happens, why it tricks your brain into feeling useful, and what the Stoics specifically prescribed for a mind that won't stop. Let's start with why overthinking feels productive, because that's the trap. It genuinely mimics the feeling of problem solving. Real problem solving moves toward a decision. It examines an issue, weighs options, and arrives somewhere. Overthinking circles. It examines the same issue from slightly different angles, over and over, without ever actually landing on a decision or an action. Your brain doesn't always distinguish between the two while it's happening. Both feel like mental effort. Only one of them actually goes anywhere. There's also a specific bias behind a lot of overthinking. The belief that if you just think about it enough, you'll eventually arrive at certainty. For a huge number of situations, that certainty was never available to begin with. You can think about an uncertain outcome for 10 more hours, and it will still be uncertain. The thinking isn't reducing the uncertainty. It's just producing the feeling of doing something about it. Now here's where Stoic philosophy becomes specifically useful, because the Stoics diagnosed this exact pattern nearly 2,000 years ago. Remember the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to you, some things are not. Overthinking almost always lives in the second category. You're mentally rehearsing outcomes, other people's reactions, and futures that are not currently within your control to determine. Epictetus would call this a specific kind of confusion, spending your limited mental effort on territory that was never yours to affect in the first place. The Stoic response isn't stop thinking entirely. It's much more precise than that. It's identify whether this thought is leading toward an action you can actually take, or whether it's just circling a fact you cannot currently change. If it's the first, think it through, reach a decision, and act. If it's the second, the thinking has already done everything it can do. Continuing doesn't help. Marcus Aurelius wrote directly about this. He reminded himself, repeatedly, not to waste time imagining the character or actions of other people, or worrying about things outside his control. He specifically framed excessive mental rehearsal of things outside his power as a waste of the limited time he actually had. Here's a practical method, drawn from this, that you can use tonight. First, notice you're in a loop. This sounds obvious, but overthinking often runs for a while before you consciously register that it's happening at all. A useful signal: if you've had the same thought, in roughly the same form, more than twice without reaching any new conclusion, you're looping. Second, ask the Stoic question directly. Is there an action available to me right now, connected to this thought? If yes, name the action specifically. Not figure it out, something concrete you could actually do in the next hour or day. If no, if the thought is circling something you genuinely cannot act on right now, say that plainly to yourself. There is no action available here right now. Third, deliberately redirect your attention to something else. This isn't suppression. You've already examined the thought honestly and found no available action. Continuing to circle it isn't discipline. It's just repetition without function. Fourth, if the loop returns, and it usually will, especially at first, repeat the process rather than getting frustrated at yourself for the return. Marcus Aurelius wrote the same reminders to himself over and over throughout meditations, not because he failed the first time, but because this is a practice, not a one-time fix. There's one more piece worth adding, borrowed from a related Stoic technique. If the overthinking involves a future outcome, try briefly and deliberately imagining the worst realistic version of it. Not to spiral, to look at it directly, once, clearly, and notice that even the worst realistic version is usually something you could survive and respond to. This often does more to quiet the loop than endless vague worry, because vague worry avoids looking directly at the thing it's afraid of. Direct examination, even of something bad, tends to be less exhausting than avoidance. Overthinking feels like careful preparation. Usually, it's just repetition dressed up as diligence. The fix isn't to stop thinking. It's to ask, honestly, whether this specific thought is leading anywhere. And if it isn't, to set it down and return your attention to what's actually yours to do. Think until there's an action, then act or set it down. That's the whole practice. I'll see you in the next one.